Noah was quietly puffing from his pipe with a look of satisfaction on his face. The item impressed him. It was both fantastic and surprisingly affordable, costing less than 10 gold for something imbued with magical properties. As long as he remained near it and gathered energy, the imbued pipe would keep the flashgrass herbs constantly regenerating. He noted the thick clouds of smoke and ash it produced but shrugged it off. With his rune, he could easily prevent the ash from reaching his lungs, sparing himself any consequences. The scene shifted as Noah strolled through the area, approaching a familiar mound of leaves. He recognized it immediately. Lee was still asleep inside, and he figured he probably ought to wake her. But before he could finish the thought, Moxie suddenly appeared in front of him, her face etched with panic. She called out to him, clearly frantic and out of breath. She'd been looking all over for him. Noah, caught off guard, asked why she was there, prompting her to repeat that she'd been searching for him. He wasn't in his room. He explained he had left because Braden's snoring was unbearable. Moxie commented that she could tell. Braden had even slept through her attempt to break in. But that wasn't important now. She had figured something out. She told him he was in danger. Lee wasn't a face stealer. Noah opened his mouth to respond, but Moxie pressed on. She had been thinking deeply about everything he had told her. She'd spent a long time studying face stealers. Initially, she thought Lee might be an unusually powerful one or a new kind of face stealer altogether, considering how little was known about them. But after their conversation, something clicked. The demon he had spoken of wasn't hiding. It was right in front of them. It was Lee. Her words stunned Noah. He hesitated before asking if that was really such a bad thing. Moxie was taken aback. Of course it was. Face stealers were driven by hunger, but demons were a different matter. Very little was known about them, except that they were incredibly dangerous. She could believe a face stealer might be convinced to behave, but not a demon. If Lee really was one, she was likely just waiting for the right moment. Noah wasn't convinced. To him, Lee didn't seem like that at all. He reminded Moxie that she had spent a lot of time with Lee, too. She knew what kind of person Lee was, but Moxie urged him to think carefully. Demons were among the most dangerous monsters discovered since the Long Night. An entire branch of mages, the Inquisitors, had been created solely to stop demons from tearing the world apart. Demons were literally born with runes that could only grow stronger by causing suffering. This revelation surprised Noah. He hadn't known that runes could gain strength from anything other than normal energy. Moxie began to explain but quickly grew frustrated. Now wasn't the time for a lesson. She demanded to know where Lee was. She couldn't be trusted. As Noah processed everything, a new thought crept in. Could Lee really be the demon Vermil had tried to summon? She had claimed she slipped through accidentally, but there was no way to know for sure. If Moxie was right, no. He shook the thought away. He didn't believe it. Lee wasn't lying. Her fears weren't without reason, but he refused to see Lee as a threat. He told Moxie she was wrong. Lee wasn't some scheming monster. She herself had admitted that little was known about demons, so how could she claim to know what Lee truly was? Moxie simply repeated it. Lee was a demon, and Noah, just as firmly, reminded her that he was Vermil. That pushed Moxie over the edge. She snapped, reminding him that this wasn't just about his life. It was about the lives of the students too. But Noah didn't see it as a gamble. He trusted Lee. And even if he was wrong, it would only mean... Moxie cut in sharply, asking if it would only mean death. Noah didn't deny it. Silently, he admitted she was right. Still, he urged her to pause. This was serious, but had she even tried talking to Lee before jumping to conclusions? Moxie froze, her expression shifting as she realized something. He already knew. Her magic flared to life as she prepared to act. But Noah remained calm. He had only known for a day. He pleaded with her, just talk to Lee. Give her a chance. They couldn't base everything on rumors and fear. It wasn't fair to say they knew almost nothing about demons and then insist every one of them was evil. Moxie apologized. She knew Noah wanted to believe in Lee, but this situation was bigger than them. She had come to warn him, but if he refused to listen, she'd handle it herself. She had read about demons. She believed she knew what they truly were. And she was doing this for the sake of their students and for him. Noah began to puff steadily on his pipe once again, his demeanor shifting as ash started to swirl around his body in preparation for battle. He locked eyes with Moxie and asked her not to do this, his voice calm but firm. Moxie's expression hardened. She reminded him of the last time they fought and how it ended. But Noah wasn't deterred. That had been then, things were different now. People change. That was exactly why Moxie needed to give Lee a chance to explain her side before making a reckless move. Lee wasn't the type to do something as foolish as starting a fight. Moxie's voice turned cold. This was his last chance. She had come hoping to work with him, to take the demon down quietly so no one would find out he had betrayed the Linwicks. She didn't want a confrontation, but if he chose to stand in her way, then she would be forced to act. She'd call the Inquisitors. They'd scour Arbitage until every trace of anything demonic was wiped out. Noah's voice dropped as he replied, "That would only happen if she made it to them." With that, he drew power from his runes and launched an attack. Startled, Moxie activated her rune, and thick plants erupted from the earth, shielding her from the blast. She shouted at him to get out of the way. She didn't want to fight, but Noah stood firm. If she wanted to get past him, she had no choice. Internally, he cursed the environment. Too many plants, this was the worst terrain to face Moxie. He couldn't afford a drawn-out fight. He needed to finish this quickly. He couldn't let her get away. Igniting the flashgrass in his pipe, he released a cloud of ash that drifted outward. As the ash spread, Moxie's plants began to wither and decay. She immediately realized what had happened. He had reached rank 2. Reacting quickly, Moxie pulled more energy from her runes, and thick vines shot up from the ground, wrapping tightly around Noah. He grunted in frustration as they constricted him. She then summoned sharp, thorn-covered vines and launched them toward him, but stopped them just short of piercing his body. She yelled for it to end. She said she was sorry, and told him not to side with a demon, but Noah answered firmly. He wasn't siding with a demon, he was siding with a friend. He then tapped into the power of his Combustion Master rune. Its passive ability altered the surrounding air, making it inert. Moxie gasped, caught off guard. She dropped to her knees, clutching her throat as she struggled to breathe. Noah approached her and grabbed her. She choked out a confused question, struggling to understand what was happening. He shouted at her to listen. If Lee had truly wanted Moxie dead, she would have fought. This whole confrontation had been about her, and yet she had done nothing. Moxie looked at him, stunned. She could barely believe what she was hearing. Noah glanced to the side and called out softly. Lee slowly rose from the pile of leaves, tears streaming down her face. Noah turned back to Moxie. If Lee were the selfish, monstrous being Moxie believed her to be, wouldn't she have stepped in to help him during the fight? Moxie stammered, confused and unsure. She didn't understand. With tears streaming down her face, Lee turned and dashed away. Left behind, Moxie remained on the floor, her voice trembling with raw emotion as she accused Noah of deceiving her, of manipulating her into doubting herself. Noah, still lying beside her, responded with disbelief, reminding her that he hadn't orchestrated anything. She was the one who had come looking for him. Moxie lay on the ground, her voice shaking as she asked Noah what would happen if he was wrong. Noah replied without hesitation, if he was wrong, then Lee would kill them. But he'd rather be wrong and an idiot who trusted his friends than be right and a monster who betrayed them. Sitting up, Moxie reminded him that they weren't friends, just co-workers at best. Noah simply told her that whatever helped her sleep at night. She pointed out that they'd only known each other a short while. Noah dismissed the idea of time mattering, saying it wasn't about how long you knew someone, but how you spent the time. In the end, he added, people didn't have much of it anyway. Confused by his words and behavior, Moxie asked what he meant and what was going on with him. Noah avoided the question, admitting that if they fought again, he didn't think he could win, not without using Sunder. He thought to himself. And if it came to that, he knew one of them wouldn't walk out alive. When Moxie asked if that meant he wouldn't stop her if she went after Lee, Noah told her she'd win. He'd already made his stance clear. Moxie glared at him, then clenched her fist and turned to leave. But as she walked away, she called out that she'd hear Lee out and told Noah to take her to her. Noah refused. She spun around in disbelief, demanding to know what he meant. He explained that he didn't know where Lee was. There was no conspiracy, no hidden plan. Lee had run because her feelings were hurt. If Moxie wanted to fix that, she'd have to find her on her own. He would be staying right there. When Moxie asked what he'd be doing, Noah told her he'd be waiting to see if she was an idiot or not. Frustrated, Moxie told him how aggravating he was before finally walking off. Hiding behind a tree nearby, Lee wiped at her face, quietly sniffling. She'd been listening the whole time. As Moxie disappeared from sight, Lee stepped out and sat beside Noah, whispering that Moxie hated her. She said that was how people were supposed to respond to demons. Noah reassured her that Moxie was just scared. She was trying to protect her student and wasn't thinking clearly. But Lee wondered aloud if that even mattered. Moxie was still going to try to kill her. She said she should leave and that if Noah were smart, he would too. Noah told her that what he had said to Moxie applied to himself as well. He reminded her they'd already established he was an idiot. But if she wanted to know for sure, she couldn't just sit there. Moxie had gone looking for her. Lee asked what that changed. Noah answered that it changed nothing. The choice was hers. She had to decide her own future. If she didn't want to talk to Moxie, that was her decision. The logical thing to do would be to leave and avoid the risk altogether. But she could always be an idiot. He admitted he liked that option better. Before he knew it, Lee was gone. The scene shifted, and Moxie now stood across a small river from Lee. The two faced each other in silence, both wearing awkward expressions. Slowly, with clear hesitation, Moxie stepped onto the bridge and crossed over to the other side. She made her way to the bench where Lee sat and quietly took a seat beside her. A tense silence hung in the air between them until Moxie finally broke it, her voice uncertain as she asked how she was supposed to know. Lee, confused, asked what she meant. If she meant knowing that Lee wasn't going to kill everyone. Moxie admitted that she did. Lee responded by asking how she was supposed to prove something like that, but Moxie didn't have an answer. Curious now, Lee asked how long it took to become friends with someone. Moxie was caught off guard by the question and said she didn't know. There wasn't a timer on it, it just happened. Lee then asked if Moxie would ever hurt her friends. But Moxie responded that she didn't have any. She couldn't afford to have friends yet. That answer puzzled Lee, who asked if friends had to be bought. Moxie clarified that they didn't, but friends were people you protected, and she wasn't strong enough to protect anyone. She wanted to know why Lee was asking all these questions. Lee explained that she was just curious. If there wasn't a set time required to call someone a friend, then Vermil was her friend. Isabel and Todd were her friends, and she had thought Moxie was one too. Moxie responded with doubt, questioning whether demons could even have friends. She thought demons only valued suffering and power. But Lee admitted that she didn't know. She'd never had any friends before. In the damned plains, no one cared about anyone else. But helping and teaching others had started to feel good to her. Moxie was torn. Internally, she struggled with what she was feeling. She couldn't let herself feel sympathy for a demon. She reminded herself of everything she had read about how manipulative demons were. She thought it must be a trick. But then the thought crept in, what if it wasn't? Lee began venting her frustration, saying that humans killed anything they didn't like. She didn't blame them, but it still angered her to see them acting so self-righteous when, deep down, they were all the same. Of everyone, Lee pointed out, she was the only one who hadn't acted according to what was expected of her nature. Moxie had done exactly what other demons predicted humans would do. Vermil was the only one who didn't, and that was only because Moxie interrupted, finishing her thought by saying he was an idiot. She admitted that if everyone were like Vermil, maybe the world would be a better place. But realistically, they'd all just end up dead. Vermil wasn't strong enough to act the way he did. Mercy required strength, and she wasn't sure what to do anymore. She couldn't trust Lee, and Lee couldn't trust her. But Lee calmly stated that she never said she didn't trust Moxie. Surprised, Moxie asked what she meant. Lee pointed out that Moxie had shown up alone. That had to mean she trusted her at least a little. Moxie stammered, saying she hadn't thought Lee would attack her. Lee asked why not. Moxie didn't have an answer. Lee pressed again. Was it because Moxie still wanted to be friends? Moxie repeated that she didn't have friends. Lee questioned why. Then, in a tone full of quiet frustration, she asked if Moxie wanted to be a demon because she was sounding like one. She questioned what was so wrong with trusting people. Wasn't it better to be betrayed than to be alone? Moxie replied coldly that those were the words of someone who had never been betrayed. She glanced at Lee, her voice softening as she asked if Lee had really thought they were friends. Lee nodded. Moxie told her she shouldn't have trusted her, but Lee still did. Moxie tried to protest, saying there was no way, but Lee cut her off and said she still wanted to be friends. When Moxie asked why, Lee smiled and said maybe she was a bit of an idiot too. Tears began to stream down Moxie's face. Inwardly, she struggled again. She didn't want to make this decision. What if she failed again? But then something shifted. For once, there was no one forcing her hand, no family pressuring her, no blade against her back. This was a decision she could actually make for herself. She realized she didn't want to keep living the way she had been. She apologized to Lee and admitted she might have misjudged her. Lee asked if that meant they could be friends. Moxie turned the question back. Wasn't that what Lee had wanted? Lee admitted it was, but she hadn't expected Moxie to actually agree. With a hint of embarrassment, Moxie asked if that was it, if they were friends now. She blushed and said she'd never done this before. Lee said she hadn't either, but she thought it counted. As they walked back over the bridge together, Lee joked about heading back before Vermil started wondering if they were killing each other. Moxie agreed it was probably a good idea.